Hey, everybody. KMO here. And you haven't heard much from me for the last month. And that's because I've been spending my time, I won't say less productively, but doing something that doesn't doesn't result in podcasts or videos. I joined Filipino Cupid almost 2 months ago now, I guess. And I've known for years that I was interested in Filipinas, and I've been thinking a lot about going to the Philippines. And I meant to, not use the dating sites at all until I was nearly there, following the advice of a YouTuber who I've followed for quite a while, Rike of Life Beyond the Sea. He says, the boots on the ground rule applies until you're actually there in the Philippines in front of your Filipina. You don't have a relationship. Your relationship starts the minute you step in front of her. And then anything that happens online, the feelings are real. You feel a connection, but in terms of fulfilling, the implied promise of an exclusive relationship, you have no standing. And I agree. I agree with that. And yet, for reasons that I can't quite put together right now, several weeks ago, on a whim, I joined Filipino Cupid. And I talked to a lot of different Filipinas. And now my month on Filipino Cupid is over. I did not renew my subscription. My profile is no longer to be found there. But I am still speaking with one Filipina pretty much, well, not pretty much, every day. Given all the time that I spend with her on WhatsApp, it seems like we should be producing a little bit of media together. So if you get into a relationship with me, you're going to get dragged in front of the microphone. And here I am, reaching out from across the world to drag Rose in front of the microphone to say hello to you now.
Hello, everybody. It's good to talk to you.
So we met on Filipino Cupid. I think your experience of that site is probably very different from mine. Would you say just a few words about why you joined the site and what sort of interactions you had there?
Well, I joined Filipino Cupid because it was out of a friend's recommendation. And after thinking about it for quite some time, one day I also just decided to sign up and see what it's like for myself. But once the moment I registered, I wasn't really that active anyway. So I just left it to be what it was. And then, so that was 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
Since I first registered, but haven't been visiting the site for, I don't know, probably also over a year, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention to it. But sometimes I would remember it that I have an account online and I do want to delete my profile already because I wasn't really using it anyway. So one time I finally did it. I opened my profile just so that I can delete all my photos and then finally delete my account.
And what happened then?
And then I saw a message from this guy named KMO. He introduced himself and I thought that he was very polite. He was respectful, and he said if I can't catch him on Filipino Cupid anymore, I can find him in another platform. And then he did say that he's a podcaster and all that. So I did check him out, and I found him interesting.
So there's a bit of advice for you.
Found you interesting.
Here's a bit of advice for you guys. Do a podcast for 14 years before you get on Filipino Cupid so that you have a long track record of public work that people can check out. So how many people would you say you've interacted with over that 2-year period on Filipino Cupid?
I think definitely less than 5. Let's say 2 or 3, maybe.
So the opposite experience of me. You mentioned that I was polite and respectful in my communications with you. The other people that you talked to, were they less polite and respectful?
I I don't remember talking to anyone there who was rude or anything but polite. They were also, I guess, okay to talk to. I really couldn't remember so much anymore. Probably it's just like like the first time, hi, hello, how are you? Where are you from? Things like that. Then did not really develop into long conversations, meaningful conversations. It did not.
Gotcha. And yet our first conversation, our first voice conversation anyway, I was driving. I was talking to you in the car as I was driving. And
Yes.
what do you remember from that conversation?
I was feeling very shy, a little nervous because talking to an American, so that means I have to really speak English very well.
Tell people what you do for a living.
Well, I'm a language teacher.
What language?
I teach English to second language speakers.
Right.
Yes.
ESL.
But it's different. ESL, it's different. I mean, it's very basic English. So it's very different conversing with them and conversing with a real American.
So all Filipinos study English in school, but not everybody learns it. At least not everybody learns it well. So when speaking to a native English speaker, Filipinos tend to feel a certain self-consciousness and anxiety, and there's a phrase that they use to describe that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
Nosebleed.
So you were feeling a bit of nosebleed on our first conversation?
Well, I thought that I would be, but you actually sounded very nice on the phone. And also, I thought that I would have a hard time catching up with you. Like you might be talking too fast, but actually you don't. It's okay.
Well, it was okay, you say, but thereafter we started talking twice a day, pretty much every day for a month. So maybe it was a little better than okay. It was for me, just a few seconds into our conversation, I realized I could really connect with you. I felt a very strong connection right away.
Well, before the voice call, we've been exchanging messages already. So that was the voice call was just like another level to the connection.
For me, it added immeasurably. I mean, I thought that our text chats were promising, but when we first spoke on the phone, that's when things really clicked for me, or on WhatsApp, I should say.
Okay.
So let me say that while this video is about, our experience on Filipino Cupid, there's no affiliate link. We are not promoting Filipino Cupid. And I don't necessarily recommend that, Western guys who are thinking about the Philippines get on Filipino Cupid, because there's, if you're not ready to go to the Philippines right now, but you meet somebody that you really connect with, there's a certain level of frustration that you'll both experience. And it's, as I understand it, it's a pretty common phenomenon for Filipinas and Western guys, not necessarily Americans, maybe Brits or Australians or New Zealanders or Canadians or whatever, to have these very long, duration, long distance relationships, which is frustrating for all involved. So we're not promoting Filipino Cupid. We're just talking about our experiences on it. So you talked to just a handful of people in a couple of years. My experience was very different. I got on Filipino Cupid, and when a Western guy gets on Filipino Cupid, they ask you to fill out this pretty long and detailed questionnaire. And that was off-putting to me, so I didn't. And I just, kind of forgot about the site. But then I started getting messages from Filipinas, and I couldn't read them because I hadn't paid for the site and I hadn't filled out that paperwork. So for a couple of days, I just ignored those, cryptic messages, but then they really started to pile up. And then Filipino Cupid did something really smart. They gave me a few for free. They let me open and read a few of the messages. And
Mhm.
my inbox was full. I had 99 plus messages, you know?
Mhm.
And so I read a few, and then, they got the better of me. They played on my curiosity, and it worked. And so I ponied up. It's $35 if you're just going to do 1 month. If you go for a year, I think it's like $12 a month, if you pay for a year in advance, but I wasn't going to do that. I say I paid
Mhm.
for 1 month, and then I went to my settings and I made sure it would not auto renew. And then I filled out the paperwork, and then I started reading the messages. And Filipino Cupid allows you to, define your interests, so you can choose the all manner of things, about your potential mate. But most importantly, I think, is location, age, interests. Smoking is a big deal. Smoking is a deal killer for me. Um, and anyway, Filipino Cupid was, matching me with lots and lots of people and showing my profile to lots and lots of people. And I had lots of messages, and I just started chatting with people on Filipino Cupid. But here's an important thing. Filipino Cupid chat is pretty limited. You can't post pictures there. They want you to pay money to them so that you can host more pictures, if you upgrade your account. They don't want you exchanging pictures for free. So pretty soon, I mean, immediately, really, you're going to want to find some other platform so that you can do a video call and make sure that the person you're speaking to really is the person pictured, in the profile on the site, because there are a lot of scammers on the site. So before we talk about scammers, let me just talk quickly about alternative platforms. I had never used WhatsApp before, and I started using WhatsApp because a lot of Filipinas have it on their phones. And it is a really good way to speak to somebody on the other side of the planet for a very long time, without paying long distance fees. Now, I know you can do that with Zoom, or you can do that with Skype. Here's the thing. If somebody messages you on Filipino Cupid and immediately suggests that you move the conversation over to Skype, be wary. I discovered that just about everybody who wants to go to Skype is going to ask you for money right away. And there are lots of people, lots of women on the site who are genuinely interested in, establishing a relationship with you, and they're not going to ask for money. But there are a lot of women on the site who are either scammers, and maybe they're using a stolen profile picture or something like that, or they started out with the best of intentions, but they discovered that they could play on the sympathies of the men that they're talking to and get them to send them money. And so I'd like to say there's a spectrum there. There's out and out scammers, people who are not even who they say they are. All they want is money. They're going to ask for money right away. And then, there's at the far end of the scale is the absolutely honest person who just is really poor, and particularly right now during the pandemic is in a really tough spot. And, they ask for money, and maybe the first time they were just describing their circumstances and maybe showing some video to the person that, they're talking to, and that person offered to send them money. Maybe they never asked, but somebody just offered to send them money. And thereafter, they realized, oh, wait a second, this is a source of income for me. I can't go out to work because of the pandemic. I still need to eat, but here's a way that I can get people to send me money. And I encountered somebody that I think was pretty much a scammer. And I actually encountered a few, but after the first one, I recognized the signs. And I sent money to somebody who I think was probably in the other category, just a very poor person who really needed the money. But then she discovered, once I'd sent her some money, she just started asking for more and more. And eventually I had to stop the communication. So I've been talking for a while, and I know you have some thoughts on this topic. So let me stop and invite you to give your perspective on this issue.
Well, yes, it's true about some Filipinas who do ask Western men for money. And I would have to say that it's poverty. The big factor there is poverty. It's poverty that pushes them to do what they do. But also know that there are really, I think you already mentioned that there are also Filipinas on this site who are genuinely seeking for a lifetime partner who's not gonna ask for money. They just want to establish real connection with person, and it's good, But there are the Filipinas who do the opposite thing. it's poverty that they use as a perfect excuse or justification just so that they could attract potential benefactors. And they don't care if they'd be frowned upon by other Filipinas for doing such thing. For them, this is the easiest and most convenient way. And as long as they get the money, and as long as there are men who are willing to send them money, they won't care about anything else.
It's kind of like a job that they stumble into. You know, they've discovered a magic formula for getting people to send them money. So of course, you know, if you know a spell that makes money appear in your bank account, or you know, makes money appear across the counter at the you know, the remittance office or the bank, how could you, you know, and if you really need the money, how can you expect anybody not to do that?
Well, yes, true. And also I think that is also in a way is like a test for them, like whoever is the most generous person online, then that's the one that they would focus on, because that means this is the guy that would, you know, provide me with financial security someday. So I will focus on this guy. And then those other men who are, you know, not really giving in to what she's asking or whatever, it's like filtering them out. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. That's a Western guy who gets on that site will have to quickly discover some ways to filter out most of the women who are expressing interest, because you simply cannot take the time to get to know everybody who messages you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'd have to do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know, to respond to all those messages. So I discovered pretty quickly that I can be very, very specific about what I'm looking for. And I you know, changed my search parameters. So I would only match with women who have a bachelor's degree or more. And as soon as I did that, the request for money stopped. So yeah, I feel a little sheepish, like sharing that information, but here's the deal. If you don't want people asking you for money right off the bat, which is, you know, definitely not sexy and definitely not endearing, you know, if they don't know anything about you except that you're from the West and they ask for money right away, it just says they don't care about you as a person. They see you as money. And so to avoid that, I discovered that, you know, only talk to people with a college education.
Mm-hmm.
So guys who are listening to this have probably taken in a lot of other media on this very subject, and they know the difference between the province girl and the city girl. And if you don't, you know, if you filter out all incoming messages from people who don't have a college education, well, you're going to miss out on those lovely, young, naive seeming province girls, which a lot of guys seem to have a preference for. And I knew going into this that I was looking for a city girl because I wanted to live in the city, you know, primarily that was my interest. But I also discovered over time that, you know, the college educated women are more likely to be in the city. And, you know, just the sort of metropolitan, sophisticated individual that I knew I would prefer isn't going to be, you know, a 18-year-old girl out in the province with no more than a high school education. But a lot of guys want that. So let me just ask you to comment on that whole dichotomy.
Well, before I answer that, you might want to share. You also have one preference that you told me.
Okay, here's the big secret. Here's the big secret, guys. There's something called tags. Not everybody uses them, but some Filipinos will add tags to their account of things that they're interested in. Mm-hmm. And so if you go to your profile and you look at your own tags, there's a button there that allows you to search for people who use certain tags. And I did a search for people with the yoga tag because I had, you know, when I lived in New York, I did work study at a yoga studio and I just had very positive associations around yoga. And I thought that somebody who not only practices yoga, but thinks enough of it to mention it in their profile, there's a lot of other things that are going to go with that. You know, self-care, self-cultivation, basically just
Spirituality.
somebody who's living a healthy lifestyle. And so I found Rose using, by searching for people who had used the yoga tag. And I'm older than the range of, the age range that you had specified. So Filipino Cupid never would have matched us up. I had to do that search and find you, and then, convince you first via text and then on the phone that maybe the age difference is not as big a deal as you maybe thought it would have been. So that brings us to the topic of age difference.
Oh, wait, but you were asking for clarification about city girls and province girls.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
so put a pin in the
I
age
interrupted
difference.
you there.
That's all good. Keeping us on track.
Okay, so you were asking about the disparity between provincial girls and city girls.
Yeah. What can a guy who's thinking about making this journey, what should he know about the difference?
Well, in my opinion,
Speaking as a city girl.
as a city girl, I see very young Filipinas with a much, much older Western guy for, I don't know, for a husband already or just for a boyfriend. But it's very obvious. I mean, probably the Filipinas around is probably in her 20s, and then the Western guy would look like he is in his 60s or maybe even 70s. And I think that these girls are usually the provincial naive women from remote small towns in the Philippines who have discovered that they are, I guess, quite attractive to Western men, and they could try their luck with these Western men. But why choose, or why not mind the very big age difference? I think it's because when you are really so poor and from a very small hometown where you don't see any other lifestyles, or you don't see other things other than the farm or the sea, you are, and then you see the Western guy interested in you with the potential of bringing financial security to you, not just to you but to your entire family. It's very easy to then ignore the very big age difference. Whereas for the poor Filipinas who are living in the city, they are more exposed. They have access to the internet, and they see more people, they see more foreigners. They also are very much influenced by the media. So they tend to think that I could have options. I could have a Western guy who is a little bit more to my age preference, and also other factors like physical appearance and all that. So that's why the Filipinas, the urban poor Filipinas, they tend to date Western guys who are, you cannot see the very, very big age difference. Sometimes it's just same age, or maybe just say a few years older. And that's it.
So you were looking for somebody no more than 10 years older than you, and I'm 16 years older than you.
Yes, that was my preference before. But that's just a preference. It's not something that there are other factors that I, of course, give more weight, more value.
Like what?
Like if we share the same values, if he can connect with me and I can connect with him in terms of like the views in life, our perception or whatever. And again, if he is respectful, decent, polite, intelligent, for me, I can tell right away if I am able to converse with a person, you can tell so much about the person once you start talking, you know.
So I think we should probably wrap up this first video. I know we were going to talk about one other topic and we're not going to get to it, but I want to circle back to the beginning here. We started off talking about how when you get on Filipino Cupid as a Western guy, talk to a lot of people. Don't fixate on the first person you talk to, because there's a lot of people
Mhm.
to talk to there, and get to know a lot of them. So, you have a large pool that you're selecting from. But also, I mentioned that, you're going to get asked for money, and that's the bad behavior from the Filipina side. The bad behavior that I heard about a lot that Western guys engage in when they're on this site is that as quickly as some Filipinas ask for money, some Western guys are going to ask for nude photos or cyber sex or, naughty chat. And the internet is full of that stuff. You don't need to go to a dating site for that. And in fact, so many of the women on that site, they might be professional women with careers, they might be
Mhm.
older, and a lot of them are really looking for a serious relationship. And if you go into that interaction and within 5 minutes you're asking for nude photos, you're not the person. I mean, go ahead and do that. You're going to communicate very quickly to most women that you are not the sort of man they're looking for. But really, it's disrespectful.
Mhm.
So this is just, my plea to any guys who are looking for that. Don't do that. That's just so many women whose profiles I looked at, they say right there in their profile, if you ask me for nude photos, you are blocked. Don't do that. Which tells me, they've been using the site for a while and they've encountered this bad behavior often enough that they put it in their profile. Don't do this. So let me just encourage you guys, think about it. That's not respectful behavior. Now, I'll also say, and Rose, you haven't heard this before, so this might come as a bit of a shock. I've talked to women who put that in their profile. Don't bother me if you're just looking for, naughty interactions online. And after not very long, they'll move the conversation in that direction. You just got to demonstrate right up front that you're a serious, respectful, honest person, actually seeking a connection with another person and not just looking to use them for titillation. So, Rose, do you have any final comments?
Final comments.
Yeah. Any response to that?
Well, for those Filipinas who do that, I don't know. I don't understand also. I also don't understand why they do that.
Because they're lonely.
Maybe. I really can't say much about those I've never even known about those things that they do that. They put in their profile, but then they initiate the conversation towards that.
Not right away.
Not right away. Yeah.
Not right away. But after they've
Maybe they assume right away because based on prior experience, Western guys tend to do that. Like be respectful at first, be polite at first, and then when both of them are more familiar with each other already, then the guy would tend to do that. I don't know. That's just my theory, I guess.
Actually, before you go, let me just have you articulate something you said to
Mhm.
me, which is that you're very skeptical of dating sites in general.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I'm before I always thought that the norm is that you you really get to know someone very deeply when you meet the person face to face, get to shake his hand, and then and then go on a few dates after that. So the online dating is something very unfamiliar to me. It like what I said, like what I mentioned, it was just recommended that I do it because it's been like a thing now that people are too busy, so they sometimes go to online dating sites to meet somebody, things like that. But although I know of some people who were very successful at these way of meeting, still I didn't think that it was gonna work for me. So that's why I wasn't really such a believer of online dating sites.
And now?
Well, now it's different because it's just so unbelievable that I am very much able to connect with you, and just, I mean, the kind of conversations that you would have could, range from serious to not so serious to just very light to very heavy topics. And it's been very, very nice so far.
Well, I think that's probably a good place to leave this first conversation. I mean, it's not our first conversation, but the first one that we're sharing with the larger world.
Mm.
So I would encourage listeners to, if you want to hear more, leave a comment, leave a like, all that good stuff. But in particular, ask questions. I imagine most of your questions will be for Rose, but if you have questions for me as well, go ahead. But we will continue this in a future video. So Rose, thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, if they do have questions for me, I'm just going to say that I'm not claiming to be an expert on this topic, but I'll try my best. If you have questions about Filipino traits and all that, Filipinos in general, I'd be very happy to answer them.